We are now closing in on 90,000 casualties from American combat since 2001. This includes fatalities, wounded, diseased, injured, and medically evacuated from the theater. There have been 1,000 wounded in Afghanistan in just the past 3 months. It's getting worse, not better. In addition to the human cost of this war, yesterday the New York Times reported that the effort in Afghanistan costs us $1 million for every single soldier. And recent work from the Kennedy School here at Harvard shows the full cost of the war. In Iraq, we have spent well over $1 trillion in cash. But the true cost to America will exceed $3 trillion when we add the additional expenses that include the cost of medical care and disability for veterans, replacing our military equipment, and the money we borrow to finance the war. In Afghanistan, we currently spend about $3.5 billion every month. And this could grow with increased troops to $65 billion a year. The full long-term costs of fighting this war in Afghanistan are expected to be more than double that, to over $130 billion a year. $130 billion a year more than covers the cost of universal health care. If we paid down the deficit with this money, the interest we would save could finance enough job creation tax credits to put 900,000 people to work. Or it could provide Pell Grants for almost 900,000 college students. The tremendous cost of escalating this war will be paid by all of us. Higher taxes, slower economic growth, looming deficits, and in not being able to pay for health care, jobs, education, because we're spending that money on a bad bet in Afghanistan. We also need to remember that the immediate cost is being paid disproportionately by just a few, the 1% of the people in our country with family in the military. They are bearing the burden of constant redeployments, separated families, and incalculable loss. We owe it to them to evaluate the rationale for the current mission in Afghanistan before we commit more troops. As we all know, the U.S. originally went into Afghanistan in response to 9/11 to root out the terrorists responsible for the attacks, to destroy Al-Qaeda. I strongly supported that mission. But the Bush administration took its eye off Al-Qaeda and invested very little money and effort in Afghanistan after 2002. Instead, it launched an invasion in Iraq over phantom weapons of mass destruction, a move I vigorously opposed. The result was the Taliban was able to strengthen and rebuild in Afghanistan while we were preoccupied and bogged down in Iraq. There are several reasons why a mission of US-led counterinsurgency and nation-building in Afghanistan is fundamentally flawed. First, it has put us in the difficult position of imposing a Western-style democracy on a people who are historically tribal, who have their own uniquely Afghan tradition of tribal representative democracy, and who have successfully resisted other attempts at foreign intervention over many centuries. Second, we have no legitimate partner in Afghanistan. The Karzai government is riddled with corruption. And third, Al-Qaeda has fled to Pakistan, Somalia, Sudan, Kashmir, and other places around the world. The question should not be how we defeat the Taliban. The question should be how do we destroy Al-Qaeda, and what role does our involvement in Afghanistan play in that overall strategic objective? Today, the administration is considering a menu of options. Several involve increasing our presence in Afghanistan by anywhere from 20,000 to 40,000 more troops in an attempt to bolster a counterinsurgency strategy. The classic military insurgency theory, according to the military field manual that General Petraeus helped to author, says success in such a counterinsurgency mission would take at least 425,000 troops. But even with the buildup, we'll only have 100,000 troops. And the Afghan army only has 75,000 to 90,000 troops. And they are facing difficulty, even with our support, of preventing significant numbers of Afghan deserters. Sooner rather than later, we must confront the reality that if the Afghan people are not willing to fight for their own country, there is little we can do. No foreign power has ever succeeded in Afghanistan. Ask Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great. Ask King George V of Britain, or Leonid Brezhnev and Mikhail Gorbachev of the former Soviet Union. Afghanistan is where great powers go to die. Unlike these other countries, we do not seek empire but we must heed the lessons of history. Recently, it's been reported that the president is now looking for another option, that he's looking for off-ramps and an exit strategy. That provides each of you and the people of Massachusetts an opportunity for your voices to be heard. If you don't believe in an open-ended American involvement, fighting a prolonged counterinsurgency in Afghanistan, I want to provide you with a choice in this election and an opportunity to weigh in on the administration's decision-making process. I hope we have the wisdom now to change course, to clarify our mission, fundamentally change our approach, and begin to bring our troops home. We can draw inspiration from John Kennedy's experience confronting the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Soviets had secretly stationed nuclear missiles in Cuba in 1962. President Kennedy's military advisors gave him two options, bombing and invading Cuba. But Kennedy knew that neither option was feasible because they both could likely lead to nuclear war, and so he searched for a third option. And in just 13 days, John and Robert Kennedy saved the world from nuclear war with a naval blockade combined with intensive shuttle diplomacy that traded our obsolete missiles in Turkey for the Soviet missiles in Cuba, giving our adversaries a face-saving way out and ending the nuclear standoff. Expanding and escalating a counterinsurgency war in Afghanistan is not a good option. Withdrawing overnight and leaving Afghanistan vulnerable to becoming a haven for terrorists again is also not a good option. We need a third way that responsibly executes a smart, comprehensive counterterrorism strategy, helps to train the Afghan people to secure themselves, and ultimately leads to an end of our large-scale military involvement there.